Good evening. It's Monday, March 11th of 2024. This is the Stoughton Plan Commission meeting. We do have a quorum, and we are in compliance with open meeting laws. So the first item of business would be the minutes from the last meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Go ahead. Somebody else say it.
There, yell at it. Second.
Oh, second.
There we go.
All right, a motion by Schumacher and a second by Farrell. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. Next item is the City Council Representative Report.
And looks like just a couple of things from the February 13th council meeting. R14 of 2024 was approved, and at the February 27th meeting, 04 of 2024 was approved.
All right, any questions on that? Hearing none. Next, we'll go through the staff report. The staff report is pretty much the same report you've been seeing. At some point here, we'll get it updated, but I did want to take a moment to make some introductions. Tim Senman is our interim plan director.
Tim, you need to unmute. You're muted.
You can't hear us?
Nope, we must not be able to.
Okay. I'll check that out.
Okay, now you're going.
Can you hear us now?
Now, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. The only thing you missed was the minutes. And then I'm introducing Tim Senman is our interim plan director. He's been helping us out for several weeks now after Rodney and Michael retired. And then Chris Moons Pritchard, did I say that right?
Chris Moons Pritchard.
Close. Is our going to be our hopefully permanent forever planning director. So Chris started last week. And then update on our zoning administrator. Zoning administrator, we have an accepted offer from a gentleman. His name is Nick. He's moving here from out of state, and we'll see him sometime mid-April-ish is the plan. So we're really excited to get up to full speed, and Tim has offered to help us out as much as he can between now and then and ease us through the transition. We're starting to ramp up. You know, it's that time of the year. We're getting a lot of requests, so the more the merrier. Otherwise, like I said, the report that's in here will be updating here shortly as we kind of get together and divvy up some responsibilities. Any questions on anything? Okay, the next item would be consideration and possible action on a resolution approving an extraterritorial 3-lot CSM in the town of Pleasant Springs. And I'll put that up there. And then, Tim, did you want to kind of lead us through this?
Sure, and hopefully folks can hear me,
Should be able to.
those on remote. Yeah, this is a pretty straightforward certified survey map in the town of Pleasant Springs to the north. It is in the city's 1.5 mile extraterritorial jurisdiction area, but outside of the planned urban development area as identified in our comprehensive plan. It is a 3-lot CSM, proposed 3-lot CSM on the south side of Shady Side Drive. I can't say that even once fast. So again, pretty straightforward, and materials are in the packet.
All right. Any questions from commissioners? And I believe I saw Keith Comstock is on here as well. If you have any questions for Keith, he's, I believe, the developer for this project.
I did have one, Mayor.
Sure. Go ahead, Alderperson Schumacher.
With the split on the 3, there's an existing house and a garage on there now, or will that be raised, or?
Thank you. Yes, they've already been taken down.
Oh, okay.
And just for clarification, there is currently 3 lots. This does not create any additional parcels.
Yep.
What it does is it just basically makes 3 conforming parcels and reorients them towards Shady Side Drive where there's road access.
All right, I must have looked at an outdated Google Map picture, but, and I remember when the house and the garage were up on that property, but if they're down, they're down.
Within the last week and a half, correct?
Fantastic, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, any additional questions? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the ETJ.
So moved.
Motion by Robinson, is there a second? Second by Bradford. One last time for discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. Thanks for being here, Keith.
Thank you all. Good night.
All right, item number 8 is consideration and possible action on conveyance and lease of a portion of the North Municipal Parking Lot to 211 South Water Street, LLC. And I think, who wants to start? You want to start, Attorney Manthe?
Sure, I can try to walk through this one. So there are essentially 3 pieces to this. So number 1, the building on 211 South Water Street, their plan is to convert that into a multifamily unit, which I think has already gone through part of the approval process for a general development plan. What they are, with their current site plan and what a survey revealed is they would like to construct a ramp on the north side of this building. But if they were to do that, it would cross over their lot line. So to make that work, we would need to convey basically a 5-foot strip of property to the developer so they can construct this ramp. So that's sort of the issue number 1 tonight, is whether or not the Plan Commission would recommend the conveyance of that 5-foot strip to the developer. Issue number 2 is they are asking to lease 18 parking spots from the city to accommodate their tenant parking. So the Public Works is working through an ordinance right now that would sort of create a framework for how the city goes about leasing parking spots in this municipal lot and another municipal lot, just for the purposes of if there are multifamily projects. In very limited circumstances, the city would be able to lease parking spots to those developments. So, second question, I guess, tonight is whether or not the Plan Commission would recommend a lease of those 18 spots to the developer for their multifamily project. And then the third issue, which is up on the screen right now, is they have a trash enclosure. Its current location is directly underneath power lines that are operated by Stoughton Utilities. We would like to move that trash enclosure. I mean, it's technically, I believe it's off-site anyway right now, or over their lot line. We had sort of an internal meeting and discussed with the developer an alternative location for the trash enclosure. So the plan that was developed internally is what you see on the screen there, where the trash enclosure is currently in the yellow spot. It would be moved up into that green area on the right. And then there would be an enclosure around it. And we would also create some additional parking spots directly adjacent to that trash enclosure. So right now that sort of loops around. So that would be closed off. And where it's closed off, it would create additional parking. Public Works Director Hebert did review this, and he's the one that actually drew this for us, but his only concern was about snow plowing in the winter, but he thinks that would be a manageable issue. Hopefully I'm speaking, I don't want to speak for him, but I think I'm accurately conveying what he has said. We were going to just talk to emergency services like fire and EMS to see if they had any concerns, but otherwise this is a plan that we sort of worked with the developer and city staff, and the developer would be okay with this if the if the policymakers, I guess, choose to go in that direction. So those are the three issues. Happy to answer any questions, or I can pass it over to Tim if he wants to add anything else.
Okay, just, yeah, one thing to add. So currently, as shown in the slide, and this is in your packet, the photograph which was taken this past February shows 3 actual rolling dumpsters, if you will. In talking to the developer, the conversion of the use to a residential use would result in a lessened need for that many dumpsters. Essentially, he said he would need, for 18 residential units, which was what was approved at the GDP level, they would need 1 trash enclosure and 1 enclosure for, or I'm sorry, one dumpster, if you will, for trash, 1 dumpster for recyclables. And so the footprint of the trash enclosure would shrink. So what's shown on this image is not exactly to scale, but it's a rough estimate of that. And so the gates for that would sort of swing, what is shown to the south, swing open, allow vehicles to come in, essentially back in, or drive in and back out, and easily access that. But the footprint of that enclosure would be smaller. The second thing is, as Attorney Matthew noted, a GDP was approved. A specific implementation plan, along with a certified survey map, will need to come back before this body, and the specifics about what the trash enclosure would look like would be part of the SIP that you would review and approve. So this is really more direction for the developer to say, yes, you, the body, are okay essentially with this general alignment, and then when they come back with their SIP, and then those other I think those lease agreements would have the details specified in that for your review. So really, for the trash enclosure piece, they're really looking for, are you okay with this?
Yes, so I guess what we would be looking for tonight is essentially direction on those 3 items. So on the conveyance, we would just be looking for basically authorization to move forward with drafting the documents to convey that small piece to the developer. And then the second piece would be authorization to draft the necessary leasing documents for the 18 parking stalls and the trash enclosure. And then we would draft the necessary documents, create a CSM, or the developer would draft a CSM to convey that land and sort of clear up the lot lines. But that's sort of what we're just looking for tonight, is direction on how to move forward.
Yeah, and I'll just add a couple things. Part of the CSM is the developers would have to do a survey, so there's a cost associated with that. So we're trying to make sure that we have appropriate approval before they expense the cost of doing that. And then on the parking, at the council, for the council members know this, but the commissioners might not. On Water Street, which is to the left side of the map here, we eliminated the no parking from 3 to 5 in the morning. So what that will do is it'll have people that maybe currently are parking in the parking lot overnight, or even some of the residents could choose to park on the road now instead of in the parking lot. So we're trying to be sensitive to, the capacity of the parking lot. There will be some events, when there's stuff going on downtown where the parking lot will get full. There is additional street parking, during those hours. And then there's also the South Municipal Lot. So we think we have enough parking. I know that there's been some concerns expressed about that. The Water Street is kind of our pilot for the overnight parking. We're going to see how that works out, and if it works out according to plan, we may extend that to some of the other side roads. Probably wouldn't do it on Main Street, because in the winter we go back in the evening and actually pick up the snow on the sidewalks on Main Street, but on the side streets we don't do that. And if there was a snow emergency, there would be alternate side parking. And then the only other activity that's typically early in the morning, but I don't know if they do it from 3 to 5, is street sweeping, garbage pickup, and brush pickup. So we kind of ran those items through Director Abear, as well as the items that Rick covered during the parking lot. And we think we're going to gain 4 parking spots in the parking lot, possibly a fifth one where the current dumpster is. We talked about maybe having an ADA parking spot there and then putting the stripes under the power lines so the utilities would still have access if they need to do some work there. That hasn't been fully vetted out yet, so we're definitely, sensitive to make sure we have enough parking. And as we've talked in the past, we think that this is a good project to have affordable apartments in the downtown where people can walk to work or to get their goods. We think that'll be good for the people that live there and the downtown businesses.
Ramp, how long is the ramp? It's 5 out, but how long is it? Because there's parking spaces right there against the building, so how many are we gonna lose?
So I don't think this would actually affect any of the parking spots. So it's just moving it out a little bit. And I don't know if this,
I could stop sharing and you can share yours if you want,
yeah,
or is it in the packet?
I'm not sure if it's in the packet.
I don't know if I have
I can forward this to you.
Unless I'm missing something, there's nothing that I could see in the packet referring to a ramp.
No, I didn't.
When we mean a ramp, it's kind of like a sidewalk on the side of the building there in the white on the map. So that's what we're referring to as the ramp. And I can pull that back up. So,
So it's the curbed area that's just raised.
yeah, it's more like I'm gonna call it a walkway.
It's parking lot, it's in the current, it's in the current.
It's in the white here, so it leads toward that dumpster area there.
No, it's right now, people park on it.
Yeah, so I just forwarded you like a draft site plan. I think that fix it.
Okay.
So whether there's spaces there or not, people do
All right.
park there.
So here's a better picture of it here. Can you guys see this new picture on Zoom?
Yeah, so you can
No.
sort of see like the darkened line where I
Let me
believe
just
the ramp is
reshare
going
it
to
for
be
these
depicted.
guys on Zoom. There, how's that?
Yeah, we can see that now.
Okay.
All right, so we're looking right there, right at top. What would be like on top of,
Yeah, so I believe the like darkened line up against like the north side of the building, that's where the rampway
so
would
it
be.
goes about 2/3 of the way.
Okay. Purpose of that is for pedestrian access, walkway?
I don't recall specifically, but I believe that's essentially what it
Sounds
is.
right.
Yeah.
It's like Duran was saying, there is like, if a vehicle is parking in one of those spots up against that building, the curbed area, or the ramp, I guess we're calling it, is such that if somebody's tires pull up to the curb that's right there, the overhang of the front of the back of their vehicle basically blocks that. Or are they trying to expand this away from the building so that that can't happen?
I think they're trying to expand it away from the building. My other concern is, that's kind of a narrow driveway right now. I use that parking lot. So, how wide is that curb gonna be? 3 feet from the building?
Yeah,
Five?
it would be a 5-foot conveyance.
Yeah, how much of a driveway are you gonna have coming in from Water Street into the parking lot once you add that 5 feet and back those cars back, because you've got spaces still designated there? That's gonna be really hard for people to pull out. I'm just imagining what I do now and, looking at adding 5 feet or eliminating 5 feet.
Yeah.
So if I may, so there's almost 5 feet there now, so we're not going to go another 5 feet out into the parking lot such that the drive aisle would be narrowed that much. But that's, again, on the screen, what's shown in bold and black on the north side of the building,
Right.
that's the land that would be conveyed to the developer to account for that ramp. So there were, in Commissioner Caravello, the parking or the wheel stops would have to be placed such that no tire overhang or vehicle overhang would have to be, the vehicles would have to stop so that there won't be any overhang. So that'll have to be modified slightly, those parking stalls. But in terms of additional land, I don't know. I think it's close to 5 feet that's there now.
But
When
people parking at 5 feet right now.
no, it's actually an elevated. So there's a curb, and then it's like a paved sort of, I'll say, access walkway to access some of the equipment or the utility meters and so forth on the north side of the building.
People are right up against the building.
So it's vehicles parked close, and I'm sure there are some vehicles who a portion of that front, does overhang to some degree, but the wheel stops will have to be modified slightly to ensure that that doesn't happen.
So is the goal here, or one of the goals here, basically to convey it to the property owners so that it's not,
Right.
so that it's theirs and not ours?
Yes.
Because right now, it's kind of a curbed sidewalk in a parking lot.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, one thought was we could do like an easement or include this as part of a lease. It's probably cleaner just to convey it, and then we don't really have to worry about it anymore. But there are certainly alternatives out there, whether it's a lease or an easement. So.
Yeah, I think at one point this was a municipal building, it was a utilities building, and I think the building is literally over the lot line or.
It's
so-
right up against the lot line.
Yeah, so that's kind of the issue.
Yeah,
So we're
it
trying to
looks
clean
like-
that up while we're doing all this.
According to the surveys that have been done, it looks like in 3 corners, it's kind of over.
Yeah, that alley.
Yeah, so the idea is to try to clean up some of the, I'm gonna call them sins of the past, where things just kind of evolved, the dumpster under the power lines, the building kind of up against the lot line, making it AD accessible and those types of things. So we've tried to really think this thing through, and the dumpster was kind of the last piece of where to place it. And, I think this is a good spot. It adds more parking. It eliminates that flow going through there, but actually I think it makes it safer by not having that.
I'm just gonna be a little picky, so don't mind me, I'm always like this, I know you don't know me. But that means that the city is conveying what, a 5-foot by 20-foot piece of property, or a 30-foot, is it going along, are we conveying the whole, or just that where the black is marked out?
Just the black, well,
So not-
it's up to the city, I guess, on how much it would,
Yeah,
how much
it
or how much
seems
list.
weird that
little.
it would stop in the middle of the building. I mean, just for future's sake, but it just seems kind of weird that you wouldn't do the whole side of the building.
Mhm.
And we're talking about just conveying this to them gratis, no cost to the developer, no
That's
reciprocal.
certainly a discussion we could have, is, how much is it actually worth? I mean,
I'm just concerned down the road, because if you do it for one developer and we have other developers that are looking at doing stuff, they're gonna say, well, you did this for this project and they just gave it to, I'm always about precedent, just what kind of precedent are we setting for other people downtown? So that would be just something to look at, I think.
and if that's the direction you want to go, we could certainly, I don't know if we do like a full appraisal, but we could just sort of like see what we do on like a per acre basis on similar like sort of vacant lot sales.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, at the end of the day, this is going to be part of a TIF project. So it's one way or another, it's probably going to be paid for through that, directly or indirectly. It's kind of the world we live in.
And it looks like the upside would be that it would then clean up that 0.6 of a foot
Yeah, that it's over.
property line that the building is over on the north side, right?
Yeah.
So I
So I'm gonna
guess,
start to work at the trash enclosure bit. The way that it's set up now, I see they've got that it is going to, or one of the benefits claimed in here is the elimination of the option to drive through the parking lot. I'm assuming we're talking about the collection vehicle. Is that right?
Really,
Or any?
any
Okay.
vehicle, really. I mean,
So the issue I have with the orientation that it is a trash truck going to have enough room to maneuver in there?
And that's certainly, I remember we had a call talking about that.
They need about a
Yeah.
30-foot clearance behind in order to make a clean turnout. Because I've watched the trash truck struggle at one of my buildings
Mhm.
a lot in just trying to maneuver in and out of, especially to come in and have to turn to a right angle like that and then have to try and back that out.
I think they would just back in and wheel the dumpster out and lift it.
All right,
Like,
it's painful.
glad I don't have to do it.
And kind of going along with that, my comment, I mean, I went and looked at this afternoon, and, I mean, it's not the end of the world, and I know this is done in places, but if a vehicle pulls into that piece of the lot where they are basically coming in off of Division Street, and they are now pointing in a west direction towards the building, and they get to the end of the parking spots to discover that there are no available spots. It's not super narrow, but, so there is visibility, but they would just have to back out all the way back to Division Street, which, I don't know if that's the best way to do it or not, but that would be their only option in this scenario, seems like. So I don't know if that's the safest way to engineer this. That seems like there's an advantage to having that pass-through or drive-through where the enclosure would, you know, in this concept where the enclosure would go in the future. So, I mean, I can see there's upsides, but seems like there's downsides as well. I just don't want to create a problem.
Nope, and that's
Solve one and create another one.
That's why we're trying to seek direction here tonight, right? Is to see what the commission's thoughts are, and frankly, one of the challenges is the location of the power lines, which really doesn't show up that well because it sort of runs right alongside of that building. So even like that, I don't think we could even make that corner work. Like just if you were to rotate it, like flip it 90 degrees onto the north side of the building, I think then we still run into issues with the power lines. So it's a challenge, that's for sure.
One more follow-up then would be, if that enclosure moves to the suggested space and four and potentially 5 other spaces are created as a result of that, do they still look to lease all 18 spaces, or would these be included within that 18 spaces?
I believe the ask is 18. I don't know if they've asked about those particular spaces because they had asked for some basically across the way from them, like 3 or 4 basically on one of the other aisles. So I think they might want to include those rather than some that are farther away from the building.
Sure.
Any other? Go ahead.
Just a comment about the dumpster. I don't really care about the 5-foot conveyance myself, but the dumpster, just about any apartment complex, you'll often find by the dumpster things like a couch, mattresses, box springs. People don't want to take stuff, so they just throw it near the dumpster. So it might be some consideration, given that this entire site is so constrained, as to the size of the area that's allocated for that, being the use of this building is changing.
Okay.
Yeah, they tend to accumulate.
Yeah. Well, it'll be visible, so
Attractive nuisances.
hopefully it'll look better than it currently does.
Yeah, and one way to potentially address that is through like the lease agreement with them. So again, if the decision is to move forward with this proposal, which again, I'm not taking a position on it, but you know, in the lease, we could just include like any sort of large items, like everything has to be in the dumpster. Any items or large items that accumulate have to be removed within a certain amount of
In
time.
ordinance.
I certainly like that. It could become an enforcement issue, but I like that approach.
Yeah, the other thing we didn't mention is where the dumpster currently is, there's a drain there. And that's another reason why we want to move the dumpster. We,
Sure.
you know, we don't want things going into that. So I think Brett's idea was to try to get it away from that.
If I, excuse me, if I may, the other thing too, in resizing that, the dumpster enclosure hopefully could act as a deterrent for trash accumulation like you're talking about. If you have what looks like now, I mean, I could easily see people whipping stuff over the fence to just put in there because, right, trash sometimes accumulates more trash. But if there's no room to put anything other than one recycling container, one trash container, then it would be so conspicuous that, again, that agreement could be enforced if there's language in there regarding accumulation of trash outside the enclosure. Just a thought.
I don't think it would act as a deterrent. When you're moving out, you don't really care. If it's not room inside, you'll just leave it outside. You're going anyway, so it seems to be the general apathy with the folks like that. So I did have some comments about the parking, if we're going to talk about that next. Lease.
Okay, so how do you want to handle this? Are we gonna make motions, or are you looking for feedback, or?
Yeah, I mean, if the commission's ready to make a decision tonight, they could, you know, give us direction on how they want to proceed, whether it's one or the other, or all of these items. I think it makes sense to break it up into pieces. So one piece could be direction on the conveyance, one could be on the parking spaces, and one could be on the trash enclosure.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the parking and then consider the motions, or do you want to?
Let's get that out of the way.
Yeah.
What would you like to?
Conveyance out of the way.
All right. So you want to make a motion to that effect?
Sure.
Okay.
You want to do the whole length of the building?
What was the motion? I can't hear what's
I think
going
the
on.
Can you turn your mic on?
Yeah.
Mic on.
I have.
All right. They're
I think
trying to
the
put
whole
some
length-
language
whole
together
length
to
of
make a motion on the
Okay,
conveyance.
All right, we're gonna, I'm not good at this, but we'll say
Whole
5
length of
foot,
the building.
whole length of the building,
And then try and reduce TIF.
yeah.
Basically directing staff and the developer to draft the necessary documents to convey 5 feet along the whole
5
northern.
feet for the whole length of the building.
Yep, and reduce that value out of TIF ask.
Did they get that from you?
Yeah, that was kind of Frankenstein.
Okay, so the motion is to convey the 5 feet the length of the building, direct staff to draft the agreement to do that. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Schumacher. Any discussion on that one? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. And then the second one is the dumpster.
I mean, I think that's probably the best option that we're gonna have to move it out of utilities reach and out of that drain area. But I think to follow it up with, like Tim is saying, get that enclosure down about as tight as possible on there. I mean, I don't know if John's disposal needs to if they should have an opinion on it of how they want to handle that trash bin in and out of there. I mean, I'm sure they've got a preference or something like that, but I don't want to make their job any harder than it has to be.
Okay, I think the property owners have already consulted with one of the waste haulers to look at dimensions and how
Right.
the functionality, so.
As long as they're clear on that, I
That
just,
alley is even a problem right now, so.
Yeah.
I don't want to give them any more problems.
yeah, I just don't want to give them any more issue in that tight space already. So I guess, I would make a motion to move that enclosure to what Director Hebert has recommended for that.
Actually, before we get a second on that, I'm just wondering if there's another,
Third option.
if there's another way to configure this that hasn't been thought of yet. And I know that in here, in the wording, in the request is, provide, creating space away from tenant windows or doors, so they're actually trying to move the dumpster and the dumpster enclosure away from the actual building. I'm just like wondering if there's another imaginative way to do this, but there's not a whole lot of space to work with.
Yeah, and if I remember, I don't think the dumpster enclosure will be tight to the building.
It looks like it's, surrounded by that green
Yeah. and
space. It
it's
sounds
not
like
really
it's spaced away from the building.
to scale.
And there's a couple reasons for that, as was explained by the property owner, in part because of the historic nature of the building. They're going to restore the exterior to include or what were the historic fenestrations, the openings, the doors, windows, etc. So the closer a trash enclosure is along that east facade is going to be closer to someone's living quarters, whether it's a entrance egress door or someone's window. So they're going to be looking out on this space. So that's another consideration, is to try and push this away far enough, yet have it close enough so it's functional. So there's some sweet spot in there. I don't know what that really is, but this was essentially taking as many factors into consideration that we could.
And I would think as we get closer to the project, we would probably actually have a real drawing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and as interim director Simon said, this would need to be included in their SIP. So you would see a more specific plan, I guess, and could include conditions in that zoning approval as well.
And how do you guys feel about how it creates the parking where if somebody gets to the end of that, they basically have to back
It'll be a
out
challenge.
to Division
I
Street?
think it's an issue, but I'm not sure how to avoid that. I mean, it's a tight parking lot, you've got cideries, trash, you've got, other trash that's back there that, I'm trying to keep it wide enough for everybody to get through and.
Yeah, I think it's not optimal,
I mean,
but
it's
this whole thing
city,
is
this is
10
a
pounds
problem
in a
every
5-pound bag.
city has with,
Right.
trying to work old neighborhoods and, it's just narrower and you're taking land and trying to make concession. But you're right, I mean, there is a concern. Do you see an option, Phil?
Well, I'm looking at the island that is there, and I don't know if it looks like maybe there's 2 trees.
Yeah, I think is there a power line there too? A light or something is there? Pull up
Yeah,
what?
like something in the middle.
So what do you think?
Well, I was just kind of like, oh no, that island is there, and is it, how critical is the island?
I think I looked at that and I think that.
Does it have a
I
light
want
on
to say
it?
there's a light there.
Okay. And I don't know if that one has grass or if it just has rocks on it, but I'm guessing if there's trees and a light, maybe there's grass on that one as opposed to rocks. I didn't actually look at this particular. So I guess there's 2 trees on it in that illustration that's on the screen.
So what are you thinking though, with that island?
Well-
Eliminated as a drive, as a pass-through.
Pass-through?
Yeah, I was still trying to come up with some way that we can preserve enough space for a pass-through, and I don't know what would be required for that, and, you know, not gain all the parking spots, gain the space for the dumpsters, and have a pass-through. But I'm guessing that probably isn't really possible without some sort of magic.
The other issue where if the dumpster's gonna be away from the building, and that's another land conveyance that's beyond their property line.
Did you guys hear what Brett said? If that's a land conveyance situation, because that is beyond the line of the property.
Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, that's one approach we could take, is conveying that piece, or include it in the lease of the parking stalls. So, you know, I've personally gone back and forth on what makes the most sense here, because if you convey it, then, you know, obviously you don't have any control over it, and then you're just you're stuck with that configuration forever, versus leasing it. You know, because you're putting that, they can use that property, but you could potentially reconfigure it in the future, you know, so they're kind of even decisions for me, I guess.
Yeah, it looks like it's approximately 4 parking spots worth of space, give or take, so probably leasing it would be the optimal way to go, so that it is still the city. Yeah, good point.
And you may be able to turn around, so where the trash is now, depending on what we do there, let's say we make that an ADA accessible spot, there'll be stripes on there. You might be able to turn in there and back up and get out of there. Or we could just mark it no parking in that area and leave that whole corner open, would be the other option. So at least if they ran out of parking, they could pull in there, back up, and then go out.
You know, I guess my biggest concern with the backing out situation that we would potentially be creating, unless we can come up with a way to figure that, is that people would be backing up over the sidewalk on Division Street, which, you know, it's like I've seen people, even though cars now have backup cameras and all sorts of stuff, I've seen people just ignore everything in their car and whatever bells and whistles are going off and just smash right into stuff. So since it's a pedestrian situation,
No.
so I don't know if I have answers, or if I'm really
I don't know, we had half a motion.
we did.
So what I'm hearing is the light on the island is the problem with using.
And the trees.
There's 2 trees there.
I guess, I think the better option would be like in the existing enclosure, if you did put that one into an ADA compliant with a van accessible one or something like that, with the extra bit on there, extra sides on there, you might be able to eke a little bit more room to swing a car around in there. Said I was just joking over here about if I had a 1974 Thunderbird, there's no way that I could back that in there.
We have people with those kind of
Right.
cars in town.
Well, and also, I guess, as I look at this thing, I was kind of imagining it as curved, or the green space being, if the area that's in the illustration next to the possible enclosure that's green, if that was actually just painted and it didn't have curbing on it, and it just basically was, you know, painted to indicate that this is space, it's not a parking spot. So if somebody got to the end of that, they could pull into that and well, no, not drive through, but if they could pull into that and then back out enough, because there is, between the parking lanes in the space, it is pretty wide. So, you know, hopefully if they've got a driver's license, they should be able to figure out how to navigate pulling in there and doing a Y-type turn and backing out. That's a lot of ifs. So if that would be, you know, I was just imagining that area would be curbed, but it's like, depending on how it ends up in the SIP and how everything measures out, that could be a potential solve.
Yeah, we would definitely, you know, give feedback to the developers, so when they design their SIP, they would take all that into consideration.
Otherwise, we'll bring up the same issues again when they
Yeah.
bring an SIP.
Yep.
That's what we need.
So,
Yep.
Are you good
Oh.
with that, Phil?
I think so.
okay, so Alderperson Schumacher, you had kind of a motion to direct staff to relocate the enclosure in the lease, is that what you were saying?
I didn't, we came up with that afterward, but, just to move it to the proposed location that Director Hebert had come up with.
Okay,
And, that bit of land that's over their property line, look at a lease agreement for that one, so we retain control over that piece.
okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Farrell. Any more discussion?
We'll look forward to an SIP on that one, though.
Okay. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That one carries. So then the last item is the parking lease.
Yeah, and the site plan has, at least the initially proposed ones.
Yeah, so this is what they initially proposed, but assuming that the dumpster ends up where we just discussed, they may want to reconsider some of these. And I don't know how specific we need to be tonight. I think you're just looking for whether or not this group thinks it's appropriate to enter into a lease.
Exactly. You know, we don't need to, if you have thoughts on where the parking spots should be, this is what they've proposed. I think the proposal has been somewhat modified where those 3 in the top left corner would be moved down next to basically the trash enclosure. But they are requesting 18 stalls for their development. And we sort of explain some of the background on the ordinance that we need to do, and that it's going through that process for leasing the parking stalls. But yeah, also seeking direction on this one.
And you might recall way back when they first came in here, I don't think necessarily parking was required, but it was a request that they had, and I think it was also something that some of the commissioners desired. So this is kind of what they came up with based on that feedback. And 1 per unit. After that, it's kind of, you know, whatever space might be available either in the lot or on the roads.
So if we were to go ahead and approve this, are we also saying that anyone else in town can lease parking spaces? Is there some kind of a requirement? We have a lot of property owners downtown that don't have parking for their tenants. And I could see this whole lot go, and then are we gonna say this is the only lot we're allowing it in? We're not gonna allow it in other lots because there are homeowners over near the gazebo, and there's lots of people that would like to lease parking
So
spaces.
what we've done so far is we have been going through public safety and doing the ordinance updates, like the overnight parking on Water Street was an example. Some of the 48-hour parking are other examples in our municipal lots. And at the next public safety meeting, we are going to talk about the north municipal lot and the south municipal lot, and create an ordinance that would potentially allow us to have parking with some limitations. We had like min-maxes, because we don't want to be in the business of renting out one parking spot for one tenant in the building. We want to do the masses and then, try to create the additional parking on the road for the one-offs. So at this point, at least to start with, we would look at drafting that ordinance and trying to minimize it to this north lot and potentially to the south lot, because there is another building that we would like to add housing in the second and third floor. And we're having conversations with the building owner. So that one would be similar to this, where it also back up to the other municipal lot. And at least initially, what we would propose in the ordinance would be to limit it to these two lots, and Rick has been working on that.
Yeah, the current ordinance draft that's going to public safety spells out exactly when the city could do a lease. So it's just for the north and south lots, and it's only for like multifamily projects that are, I believe, adjacent to or close to the parking lots. And the lease would have to be between like 5 and 18 spaces. Like there's a minimum and maximum on what the parameters would be.
Just a question, because Drickney's not here, but has Matt looked at this, and has he said how this opens us up? I mean, because you've got a lot of people with like, two tenancies and things in buildings, and I mean, is this going to open up that they're going to say, oh, well, they're only allowing it for the big developers and they're not allowing it for us? Or I just want to know what the city is incurring by doing
So
this.
Rick is basically, he's the full-time attorney now.
Okay.
So Matt is kind of going toward the sunset. So Rick is, so Rick's going to have to answer to himself on this one.
Yeah,
and we try to structure it in a way where we can create parking opportunities like we did on Water Street for the apartments that, like I said, are maybe one or twosies. So they will have additional options. They could always still park in the parking lot like they currently do, but we would like to give them more opportunity to park closer to their units, because their units aren't typically in the middle of the parking lot. They're a lot of times on the other side of the road. So we're trying to find that balance, and it might take us more than one try, but we hear where you're coming from, because we had the same questions.
Yeah. And one other question. As you're writing this lease and ordinance and whatnot, are you securing a percentage of the parking lot for city residents? I mean, not for this permanent parking or leasing options? Are you saying like only 50% of a lot can be rented out, or?
We're saying only, I think it was it 20 stalls? Or 18 is,
Yeah.
The south unit will have less. So it would be limited to the 18, and that would be it, because it's only going to be, for certain projects.
Yes, we're establishing maximums on
Yeah.
what would be allowed.
And I forget how many parking stalls. At one point I had the percentage figured out, but we went to the number instead of the percentage. I want to say there's 7, well, we could count them quick. I thought there was 70-some spots here, but that's just off the top of my head.
I'm sorry. Where are we getting the numbers right now? Are we using like a Madison type numbers for, parking, where they do monthly parking for people, or where are we getting the numbers for what we're going to charge them on a lease?
So what I've done so far is I went through and basically Googled all the places in the state of Wisconsin that either have leased parking, but most of them are like permitted parking. We really don't want to do parking permits, quite frankly, for 2 reasons. We don't want to be the administrator of it. All we want to do is collect the check. We don't want to do the enforcement. We want the landlord to be responsible for enforcing their parking spots. I don't want the PD spending all their time doing parking enforcement, especially downtown. I'd rather have them looking for bad guys or speeders or something like that. So, so we would structure it in a way that is consistent, and it looks like it's probably somewhere between $200 and $300 per spot per year, basically. And so the landlord would basically cut us a check once a year based on whatever we agree to in the lease. And that would more than likely, that conversation I think is going to happen at Finance Committee. So it's like every committee is going to have their own piece of this when it's done, if we get it to the finish line. And I have a spreadsheet with those numbers on them, but it's from last year now. It's already, could be dated, so I have to go back through, but at least I know the municipalities and I can go through and update that for the finance committee.
One more, sorry. How are you figuring you're going to identify those spots as theirs? I mean, is it gonna be a different color on the ground? How are we gonna let residents know that those are?
Right, and the thinking would be we put it on the landlord to identify what spots are theirs, so they have to either put signs up or put the markings on their spots.
Yeah, and they really, you know, as you might recall, said that the parking is important for them to be able to rent. And we hear that all the time. So they would be responsible for the signage and the maintenance of the signage. The regular parking lot maintenance and snow removal we would still do as we currently do. In fact, we probably wouldn't want them to do that anyway. But yeah, that would be part of the lease arrangement. And yeah, it's fairly complicated. You wouldn't think it would be so hard. But we've tried to cover our bases, and if you have any more, feel free to email them to us, because it'll be at public safety in a couple weeks, and then it'll be through an ordinance, so then it'll be at council twice.
And finance once or twice.
Oh yeah, then there's finance.
So one other question on this one. So with that building, if they have, you said they have, if they're asking one space per unit, so 18 units on that piece, how many are they required to have X number of ADA spaces based on that, or based on their tenancy?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure on what the ADA requirements are. I don't know, Tim, if you know.
If I recall, it's, and I don't remember specifically, it's either 25 or 50 as the first break point. You have to have at least one per, it's
Okay.
either 25 or 50.
I think you're right, yeah.
So yeah, we definitely would look at that too. And so I think what we're looking for right now is just whether or not you guys think it's a good idea to continue the conversation. Go ahead. Yep.
If my memory serves me correctly, when they first came to us with this, there was concern about the parking, and I said, just based on purely anecdotal observation, that I didn't think parking would be an issue. And so the applicants did a informal study, and they came to us with the results that the parking, in their opinion, would not be an issue. That there was enough parking spot between the north and the south lots to accommodate this project. That's my recollection. And now it seems like that has changed to where they think it will be a problem and they want to lease.
Well, they've always wanted to lease the spots. Their analysis was if they were to lease the spots, there would still be plenty of parking for the public. And most of the units, and I don't remember the breakdown, but most of them were like one bedroom efficiency, maybe a few 2 bedrooms. I don't remember if there were any 3s. So we don't anticipate, 2 or 3 vehicles per unit or anything like that.
Okay.
And hopefully some of the people that live there will, walk, because they'll be in the downtown, so they can walk to maybe to work or at least to get their goods.
Sure. The second thing, more of a broader picture, I think I was kind of surprised when I first heard that there was no parking requirements associated with downtown businesses, that it was a free-for-all. But that's fine. It is what it is. It's been that way for long before I got here, so I imagine it's okay. But now it seems like we are sort of trying to manage parking requirements on an ad hoc basis, and I don't know if that's going to continue, if this is a one-off or a two-off situation, but if it goes beyond more than a two-off situation, I would suggest that it might be worth a broad look at the parking requirements for the next 10 years for downtown. Tell me what what's the projected demand, what do we have in assets, and what's the delta? And how are we going to plan to meet that, rather than every time a project comes up, we're scrambling trying to figure out how to get 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. So that was my second thought, and that's just my planning background. We used to say all things begin with planning except for chaos, which begins with action. And it seems like we're in the action mode right now. So that's my last comment.
All right, so what are you guys thinking? You think we should go forward with the lease, or do you have any thoughts, or?
I would make a motion to proceed with looking at, or drafting lease options along with an ordinance covering those for parking in the downtown area. And like Commissioner Farrow says, to follow that up with a parking study.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
So I had a question about the parking study. Do you need that complete before the lease, or
No.
that's just kind of a side thing you want us to look at?
Just a side thing, I mean, just so we can do this to get through this situation, but before we're presented with the next one,
Okay.
let's have a look at it.
Yeah, I know the DOT will have kind of traffic analysis, but I don't know if that's the same as the parking, but at least we can see what they're projecting for traffic down Main Street. That would probably be a low-hanging fruit. We can get that information.
Right, or
But-
like Al was saying, but just to take stock of what we have for the moment.
Yeah, we don't know what the future will bring, because, you know, I have some people coming up, oh, we need a parking ramp, and I have other people saying, no, we don't want any more concrete. So, you know, it's kind of a balancing act as far as where the future is going to go with vehicles and parking and walking and bicycling. So it'll be interesting to see who's going to be parking experts these days and what they're promoting. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think also we talked about this as part of the TIF. There was a line item in there for parking, and it wasn't a lot of money. It wasn't enough to do any real infrastructure, but somebody mentioned that it could be enough to do a study. So that might feed into that. It might be an appropriate timing. And yeah, it's going to be a difficult thing to do, obviously, but you can do some scenario planning at least. You know, pick a scenario and plan towards that. If you're wrong, you're wrong, but if you're right, you're golden.
Sure.
So.
Okay.
All right.
I just have one more thing before we move on with the lease situation.
Sure.
And this is more of my property thing. How long a lease are we giving these people? Because, I mean, and are we guaranteeing them renewability? Because I'm seeing these tenants are moving in with the belief that they've got a guaranteed space. And then if the city, through whatever in 4 years from now, just decides to not renew the lease, then where is that developer at with his tenants? So, you know, it does get into a little tricky stuff with lease law and stuff, so.
Right, and that may come down to a negotiation with the developer on the lease term. You know, what the city's comfortable with versus what they're comfortable with. You know, it could be a 10 to 20 year with like an automatic renewal. You know, those details would be fleshed out, I guess, in the negotiation process.
And possibly a notification to the tenants that for only so many years, because
Right,
I know
and-
if I moved in thinking that I had a space and then all of a sudden, even 5 years later, 3 years later, I found out I didn't, that would make a huge difference. And if I couldn't get out of my lease and maybe I needed a car close, that would be a problem, so.
Yeah, and we can certainly,
I
you know,
deal with these buyers, sellers, and tenants, so.
we can add like a provision in the lease saying they have to provide notice to their tenants about
Yeah.
the parking.
All right, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed, all right. Who's gonna help me do the minutes tomorrow anyway? Okay, he has some notes. Good. I do too, but I don't know if I'll be able to understand them come morning. So, all right. Next item is consideration and possible action on resolution approving an amended site plan for 1800 Greenbrier. So 1800 Greenbrier is the STI property, and why is my map coming up here? There we go. So in the packet here, we have a memo from Tim, and he can walk us through that. We have a resolution. We have a big checklist. We had an additional information that we put at the table that we can put up for Tom on Zoom here shortly. And so we have a request to update the site plan. Do you want to cover that?
Sure, very briefly. So as you may recall, STI's site plan for their headquarters was approved last October, and they're now requesting some modifications to that. There are three specific areas that are going to be modified: the main parking lot and the associated landscaping with that. In addition, some minor exterior modifications on the north and east elevations for the building. Representatives of the applicant are here and can walk through the more specifics, but just wanted to point out, and this is included in their letter of intent. Originally, the number of parking stalls that was approved was 211. 167 are required. This newly configured parking lot would still result in 190 stalls, which is more than what is currently required. And Drew, who's at the microphone now, can explain a little bit more, but there's enough space on site for building expansion as well as parking lot expansion if and when that would be warranted. One thing, though, that we did want to point out, and I think this is the hard copy that was distributed, is a comparison of the landscaping points. And Mayor, if you can pull up that one slide. Yeah, there we go. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is a comparison of what was improved in October. That's the information on the top of the screen. And the information on the bottom represents the changes to the landscaping from a point perspective. Note that the changes still result in approximately 300 more landscaping points than are required. So while the changes are being proposed, the landscaping points are being exceeded. So with that, Drew, I don't know if you want to dive into the details a little bit.
All right, I hope I did that right at the microphone. So Drew's actually my counterpart. I'm Austin Conrad, here from China. Sorry, I know you haven't met Drew in person, so that's an easy mistake to make. Well, good evening. I was here back in October. I think we walked through the whole building, and at that point we just finished our design development package. And since in the intervening months, we've worked our way all through the end of construction documents. We've made a few refinements along the way that we want to present to you tonight. We'll first talk through the parking lot tweaks, and then we'll talk through a little bit of refinement on the north elevation. So what's up on the screen now is what we had in October for our parking lot. I'll describe the changes, and then maybe we can go forward to the new one. So there's two sides of the parking lot. So the east side is on the right-hand side of the parking lot, and the west side is the left-hand side on that image. On the east side, what we've done is we've refined the number of aisles. So we have 4 drive aisles there, and we refined that down to 3. Makes the layout a little bit more efficient and a little more user-friendly. And then off to the east side of the parking lot, what we've done is you can see on the far left side, there's a drive aisle that connects the top of the site and the bottom of the site. And just given the actual scale of the parking lot on that side, it's not necessary for that size of parking lot. So we've eliminated that. Important note there is that was never sized for turn radiuses for EMS vehicles. So we aren't changing the path that the fire department was planning to use. Their plan has always been to pull up to the building, and then there's that circle where we have a feature that has a mountable curb, so it makes large vehicles easy to pull in and out through there. All right, so could you forward through to the new one, please? Great, thank you. So here's what we're going back with tonight. Again, our little refinement off to the right side there, reducing the number of drive aisles from 4 down to 3. We have maintained that secondary aisle to the far right because we need that to make sure we get our trash trucks into the site as the trash enclosures in the southeast corner of the building, as well as our loading dock. And then you can see off to the left there, far left, it's where we have removed that one unnecessary drive aisle and added a few stalls at the end just to make that a really nice, compact, efficient parking lot. Okay, so that kind of wraps up the site plan changes. As noted by staff, we're still over on points. The total number of required points actually just dropped, as you probably noticed in that graphic, just because our total impervious surface area has dropped with these changes. If we can move forward to the elevations of the building. There we go, perfect. It's a big building, so maybe we can zoom out a little bit. Perfect, thank you so much. Okay, so in October, this is what the elevations looked like and the material palette. Material palette has not changed. Importantly, the south elevation, so that's the elevation that faces the street, is completely unchanged. We didn't make any refinements there. The refinements primarily were just on the north side, and I'll do the same thing. I'll describe them, and then we can show you. So on the back side of the building, that's the kind of middle lawn elevation in there. You can see there's 3 bump outs. There's 2 kind of tower-like elements. Those are where conference rooms are located that bump out in that facade. And then right in the middle of the building, there's this feature conference room with an outdoor porch that kind of bumps out. And while we liked that design, as we kind of worked through refinements, we thought it'd be better to carry that dark ribbon that we have, the top, all the way through. And so the conference rooms, you'll see in the next slide when we get to that, have that black band added to it. That kind of just makes that perceived height of that forehead, kind of perceived height lower in the building a bit, without actually lowering the height of the building at that point. And then the middle, which we'll show really well in the next slide when we get to it, we've reworked that roof just to be a lot less complex, just easier to detail, better for long-term maintenance. Great, thank you. So here's the updated elevation. So that little red lines kind of highlight the areas that we've changed there. So as I said, the conference rooms have that little black band now at the top to align with the rest of or to align with the aesthetic of the rest of the building at the top. And then you can see in the middle there that the roof lines on either side now connect, and just much more simplified design there, which we're really happy with. So that kind of sums up our refinements we've made, and happy to answer any questions you have.
And your roof line change on the north side of that building over that balcony portion, is that, I mean, did that cantilever over, or, because the office windows were back and it was kind of like notched out, right? Is that
so
the
yeah,
original?
so in October, that kind of cantilevered out beyond the building a ways,
Yep.
and now it's more flush with the back of that building, but it still
Okay.
fully covers the outdoor patio space.
Okay, all right.
I think it looks gorgeous. I think the only missed opportunity was the main entryway being, trailer doors.
That would have been cool. We do have a conference room inside that's got trailer doors into it.
Oh, okay.
That was really
Well,
fun.
Then I take back my comment.
What was your reduction in the overall parking lot square footage from original to proposed?
Good question. Do you have that chart you had summarizing in the staff report? I don't know the square footage off my head. I know the parking stall number count we reduced.
I guess even more simple, is that a net reduction in impervious surface? Or?
It is, yes.
All right, I don't need the particulars, I just wanted to know a net up or down.
That one?
Yep. All right.
I guess that chart doesn't really have as clear as I thought, but we have had a meaningful reduction in our impervious, and you can see that reflected in the landscape point requirements.
Have you guys cited out where you plan where you plan to put your electric vehicle charging spaces?
Mm-hmm. Yep. If you want to go back
Those
to this,
are up against the building, is that right?
yeah. If we go back to we'd be able to go back to the site plan, or the revised site plan. Yep. So you can see on the east parking lot, north side of the east parking lot, so the right-hand parking lot at the top there, we have quite a few accessible stalls. Just by code, we need those and want those, of course, as close doors as we can.
Yep.
And then that next bank of parking down is where those would be located.
All right, that's good. I was going to suggest that because if you were going to, I know you're going to do a little regrading on that corner of the parking lot, that if you're going to have your runoff going right straight in there, that at least if you have your EVs, there's going to be less runoff from those vehicles.
Yeah, and it's just a sustainable thing too. That's a lot of voltage, and the longer those lines go, the more we have lost in energy, and so our main electrical switchgear in the building is right in that corner of the building, so it's a short run.
And then with the removal of that landscape island to reconfigure your lot, or your how you have your lot configured there, I was really hoping to see that you would have incorporated that someplace else within there, so you're not creating your urban jungle effect in there.
Yeah, so there's still a lot of landscaping up by the building there. So we've got a lot of landscaping in that center circle, and then there's that large green area off to the top of the west parking lot. So as one approaches the building, you kind of come into this site through a restored prairie, and then on each side you have those medians as you drive up, and then your experience as you drive as a visitor is up to that roundabout. So I think we've done a really good job at trying to reduce that jungle feel.
Sure.
The other thing too is with the landscape, the concept is we kind of have a gradient of going from that restored prairie up to a more refined landscaping to kind of signal you're getting closer to the more private portion of the building, and so that's why we didn't put it in that very far south side, because everyone we thought about, but just kind of ruined the overall gradient idea we have.
All right, well, I'm happy you're exceeding the landscaping points, but I also don't want to see like a continual erosion of things, of aesthetics for the building.
Anybody else have any thoughts or questions?
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. So hearing none, so as you might recall, the site plans only need the Plan Commission approval. So, this is your time to, make suggestions or changes if you wish. If you're good with the way it is, that's fine too. If you are, I would entertain a motion.
I'm happy with the reduction of the overall impervious surface area and the consideration for runoff out of this parking lot. But as I noted, I know they're over the minimums on there, but if this is going to be a world-class building, I'm expecting a little bit beyond the minimum.
Do you want to see more of something? Or less of something? As the case may be.
Well, it was just a reshuffling of what they decided on for, like the big trees, versus some of the smaller things in there. I guess I just don't want to see any more erosion of what the plan was. originally presented.
What did we lose, 2 trees?
About that.
Can we put those trees back in?
I don't know where they'd fit it in the plan. I mean, on the footprint of the building.
So I guess my question for the developers then is, you think this will be the final version? I mean, at some point you have to order materials and start the work on the building. Because what I'm hearing is, you know, they prefer not to have any less than you have, and I think maybe they want some assurances.
Yeah, so this is our final version. We've submitted to the state for our permitting, and this is what we anticipate to be constructing starting this year.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve what's been submitted.
Okay, a motion by Robinson, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Farrell. And any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. That takes us to future agenda items. Did you have anything?
There are a couple potential items that we're working on, a potential modification to a site plan at 314 West Main, as well as a possible conditional use permit for 808 West Main that would allow a 2-flat on that site. There may be more, but those are the ones that we are aware of at this point.
Yeah, I think Shelley Drive might come.
So, certified survey map.
Certified survey map for Shelley, so he's looking at building a couple more duplexes, so we still have some questions that we need to answer on that one.
Yeah, and there's going to be another one that deals, it's going to be busy next month maybe, an annexation of land that the city acquired for the addition to Racetrack Park. It's about a 2-acre parcel that is currently in the town that we need to come annex into the city and establish a zoning designation for it. And maybe an easement for a welcome sign.
Yeah. There'll be more. I mean, we're getting emails every day on things, so. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Move to adjourn.
Caravello, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Schumacher. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. Have a good night.